There is a moment that many people over 60 describe in almost exactly the same way. You are reading a book or checking a message on your phone or simply looking out the window at something familiar, and you notice that the edges of things aren't quite as sharp as they used to be. You blink, you look again, and something in your chest quietly tightens. Most people brush it off. They tell themselves it's tiredness, or the lighting, or simply the passage of time doing what time always does. And for a long while, that explanation feels acceptable. After all, isn't this just what getting older means? I used to believe that too. But the more I started looking into this, really looking beyond the surface, the more I began to wonder whether what we accept as inevitable might actually be, at least in part, something we have some influence over. That question became the thread I couldn't stop pulling. Because here is something that stayed with me. Millions of people every single day consume something so ordinary, so deeply woven into their meals and routines, that they would never think to question it. It sits on breakfast tables and in afternoon snacks, and in the drinks people reach for without a second thought. And yet quietly, over years and decades, that ingredient may be doing something that no one warned them about, something that shows up not in a dramatic health crisis, but in the slow, creeping loss of one of the most precious things a person can have: their ability to see the world clearly. I want to be careful here, because this is not about fear. It never should be. What I am interested in, what I believe is genuinely worth our attention, is the science, the documented observations, the growing body of research that connects what we put into our bodies with what happens inside our eyes. And once I started following that thread, I found myself listening to the work of Dr. Ethan Walker, a specialist in ocular health and visual nutrition, who has spent years studying exactly this intersection between modern diet and the aging eye. What Dr. Walker helped me understand changed the way I think about vision entirely. He explained something that sounds simple but carries enormous weight once you really sit with it. The eye is not isolated from the rest of the body. The retina, the lens, the delicate network of tiny blood vessels that feed the structures responsible for our sight, all of it is connected to our metabolism, our circulation, and the inflammatory processes happening throughout our system at any given moment. When those processes are disrupted, the eye often pays a price. And one of the most consistent disruptors that modern research keeps returning to is the excessive consumption of refined sugar and highly processed carbohydrates. Think about what that means for a moment. Not the occasional dessert, not a glass of juice on a warm afternoon, but the kind of steady, habitual intake that has quietly become normal in the modern diet. The sweetened drinks, the industrialized snacks, the long list of processed foods where sugar hides under names most people don't even recognize on a label. That kind of consumption, Dr. Walker explained, creates conditions in the body that are deeply unfriendly to eye health over time. Here is what the research shows in plain terms. When the body processes large amounts of refined sugar repeatedly, it triggers something called oxidative stress, essentially an imbalance between harmful free radicals and the body's ability to neutralize them. The eye, and particularly the retina, is extraordinarily sensitive to this kind of stress. The retina is one of the most metabolically active tissues in the entire body. It demands a constant, clean supply of oxygen and nutrients. When the vascular system feeding it is stressed, when small blood vessels are inflamed or compromised, the retina begins to suffer in ways that may not be immediately visible but accumulate over time. For many people over 60, this accumulation eventually shows up as blurred vision that doesn't quite resolve with a new prescription, or increased sensitivity to bright light, or difficulty reading fine print even with glasses, or a creeping awareness that night driving has become something they quietly dread. These aren't always signs of unavoidable decline. Sometimes they are signals. Dr. Walker has written and spoken extensively about 3 conditions that researchers now connect, with increasing confidence, to dietary patterns high in processed sugars and refined carbohydrates: age-related macular degeneration, which affects the central part of the visual field; early-onset cataracts, which cloud the lens of the eye; and retinal vascular changes that mirror what is seen in diabetic retinopathy, even in people who have never been diagnosed with diabetes. That last point is one that tends to surprise people. You don't need to be diabetic for the metabolic effects of a high-sugar diet to reach your eyes. You simply need to have consumed that kind of diet, consistently, for long enough. And for many people over 60, that window has been decades long. For those who want to better understand how to improve vision, reduce blurry sight, and discover habits that help protect eye health over time, We left a complete guide in the first link in the description. It expands naturally on everything we are discussing here. Now, I want to be clear about something important, because nuance matters enormously in conversations like this. Reducing refined sugar and processed foods is not a cure. It is not a guarantee, and the science does not suggest that a single dietary change will reverse conditions that have developed over many years. What the research does suggest, and this is where I think the real value lies, is that these choices matter. They are not neutral. The eye is a living, responsive system, and what we feed the body, we also feed the structures that give us sight. And on the other side of that equation, there are nutrients that researchers have identified as genuinely protective for the aging eye. Dr. Walker often returns to this list because it is grounded in some of the most well-replicated findings in the field of visual nutrition. Lutein and zeaxanthin, two carotenoids found in leafy green vegetables, have been shown to accumulate in the macula and act as a kind of natural filter against damaging light and oxidative stress. Vitamin A is essential for the production of the pigments that allow us to see in low light. Vitamins C and E are powerful antioxidants that help defend ocular tissue against the kind of damage that builds up over time. Zinc plays a role in transporting vitamin A from the liver to the retina. And omega-3 fatty acids, found in fish, flaxseed, and certain nuts, support the structural health of the retinal cells themselves. This is not a complicated list, but knowing it matters. Because when someone understands that the spinach on their plate is doing something real for their macula, or that the omega-3 in their meal is genuinely reaching their retinal cells, food stops being abstract. It becomes a form of care, a quiet daily act of protecting something irreplaceable. If you want to learn practical ways to maintain good vision, avoid cataracts, and discover vitamins that help support eye health, we placed a simple guide in the first link in the description that summarizes everything in a clear and practical way. What I want to leave you with is this. Getting older does not have to mean watching the world slowly go dark around the edges. It does not have to mean accepting, one prescription at a time, that clarity is something that simply belongs to younger eyes. The story is more complicated than that, and more hopeful. Because if the foods we eat every day can quietly contribute to the decline of our vision, then the reverse is also true. The choices we make at every meal are also opportunities. Small, cumulative, entirely ordinary opportunities to give our eyes what they need to keep working well for us. Dr. Ethan Walker has spent years doing the work of translating complex science into something accessible, something that doesn't require a medical degree to understand and apply. That, to me, is the real value of this kind of investigation. Not alarm, not a list of things to fear, but knowledge. Practical, grounded, human knowledge about how to take better care of the body we live in. The ingredient that may be quietly harming your vision isn't exotic or hidden. It is the refined sugar and ultra-processed food that has become so ordinary in modern life that we stop noticing it. Reducing it, while adding the nutrients that science has shown to support ocular health, is one of the most meaningful things a person over 60 can do for the long-term health of their eyes. That's what this channel is about. Real investigation. Real science. Stories worth staying for. If this conversation meant something to you, if something here made you look at your habits a little differently, I want to invite you to subscribe. Every week we go deeper, into health, into the things that quietly shape how we age, and into the practical steps that make a real difference. The next chapter is already coming, and I think you'll want to be here for it.